So, how many of you guys have a favorite book? Do you know what your favorite book is? Anybody here? I definitely have mine, and I love sitting down and making lists of favorite books, but I think it's a little bit more interesting to ask more specific questions sometimes. So lately, I was asking myself, what book has the best intro sentence of all time? There's a lot of authors out there who think really hard about the hook that they want to start their book out with, to draw the readers in with. For example, William Gibson's Neuromancer has a great opening hook. It's one sentence I can read for you here. The sky above the port was the color of television tuned to a dead channel. That's an excellent hook. It really channels the book's dystopian cyberpunk view and theme. And if you think about it, you can almost picture this weird, abnormal static in the sky, even though that's not real. But Neuromancer does not have the best opening sentence of all time. The best opening sentence of all time in any book comes from a very stupid book called The Alphabet of Manliness, which I read when I was about 14 years old. Now, this book was written for 14-year-olds, and if you're over 14 years old, you probably don't need to read this. But the book starts out with a sentence, it's 5 a.m., and I'm editing a picture of a Shaolin monk to make it look like he's headbutting a small child. Genius. Not actually genius, but this is a masterful brushstroke of a man who knows that he is writing for an audience of 14-year-olds. This is a hook. And I have read many different books since, and no authors that I have read have been able to match this prowess, myself included. So like Gwen said, I wrote a book at the end of 2014 called 10 Steps to Earning Awesome Grades. This is actually free on my website, so if you want to read books about school and stuff, it's on my website. I'll tell you where it is later. But I was trying to figure out how I was going to start this book. I had all 10 steps sketched out. It's 10 different chapters. I have all those written out. We're good. Now we got to do the intro, right? Intros tell people what's coming in the chapters ahead. All right, I'll tell people this is like a Mega Man game. You can start with any robot master you want. Just go to chapter 4 if you want. But the opening sentence I was completely stuck on. I didn't know what to do. I could not channel the genius of the headbutting guy, so I decided to procrastinate instead and work on the cover design first. Now, I'm not an artist. You're going to see some drawings in this presentation. Obviously, I did not go to design school. But I thought, hey, because I can't draw, let's work with some text and let's throw some icons. This is actually my sketch, my original sketch for the cover of the book. Didn't use that one right there, but I went with the icons one because I thought, hey, there's royalty-free icons anywhere on the internet. I can go download some of those, slap them on the cover, I'll have something that looks pretty good. So now I'm thinking to myself, what icons do I need for a study book? Well, clearly you need a brain, right? I mean, brains are sexy. Brains just evoke feelings of, I'm going to get smarter if I read this book. You got to slap a brain on there. You got to have books on there, because if you put books on your books, that's meta, and that's good, right? Meta things are good. And we got to have coffee, of course. I mean, 10% of my blood content is probably coffee at this point. Okay, now 11%. But what about the fourth icon? I couldn't really think of anything. And I had recently found this game called Goat Simulator. I don't know if anybody here has played Goat Simulator. It's a fantastic game. It's on the iPhone now. It's wonderful fun. And I thought to myself, why not put a goat on the cover of this book? Goats are hilarious. I love goats. And because I like to do Wikipedia binges, I started reading up on goats, and it turns out that these guys are actually pretty smart animals. And I started thinking to myself, maybe goats have some things figured out that we don't have figured out. And I am not the only person who thinks this. In fact, I was in Boulder, Colorado a couple of months ago, and as I like to do when I go to any new town, I find the coolest independent bookstore I can find. So the one in Boulder, amazing by the way, I find this book called Goat Man. This is a guy who woke up one day and thought to himself, wouldn't it be cool to be a goat? Now, I mean, who among us have not had that thought? But I can tell you from personal experience, when that thought comes into my brain, it usually worms its way out the other ear in about 5 minutes. I actually like being a human. Not this guy. This guy's like, no, I'm going to get some scientists and some ergonomics researchers and a bunch of other people, and we're going to build this crazy goat prosthetic suit. I've got legs. I got a GoPro strapped to my head. I'm going to go out and eat grass, the whole 9 yards. And when we have people turning themselves into goats, you have to ask yourselves, do these guys have things figured out? I mean, at the very least, you have to admit they know what they want. I like to yell. I like to eat grass. I got things figured out. And we often don't have things figured out, right? It's a little harder to figure out what we want to do with our lives, especially when you're not even halfway through college. You're like, I don't know what the heck I want to do. And that can be a problem because people make it seem like you need to make these decisions right now. They make it seem like the career path you follow is this nice, big, straight line from major decision all the way to career. So what you select now is important. Make sure it's a good selection. And what I want to illustrate for you in this talk today is that this is not an accurate representation of a career path. Career paths are actually very messy. They have lots of divergent paths and tangents and convergences and things that you cannot predict. And this is a sketch of my career path. So I want to share it with you today because I think it's useful to have crystallized, concrete examples of how people's careers develop so you can see that it's not that important to choose exactly what you're going to do for the next 50 years today. You know, I love seeing how people got to where they are today. How do you get from, baby to now? And yeah, there's lots of Lunchables and there's lots of Power Rangers along the way, but I want to know the other details. So with stories like this, I think it's important to start with the now, with the here. How do we get to whatever this is? Well, let's define it. So if you were to ask me what I do as my job, I guess if I had to give you a very succinct answer, I would tell you that I'm a professional YouTuber. The remote didn't work. And I'm not a hand letterer, but I do try. So I make YouTube videos, this is what I spend most of my time doing, that help students study more effectively and become more productive. I've made videos on how to focus. I've made videos on how to write faster notes in class. I did a video on how to wake up early if you want to do that. And I also did an in-depth speed reading research video where I debunked speed reading. So if you ever have like a speed reading seminar here on campus, maybe watch this first. Go into it with a grain of salt. And I've made about 65 other videos in the past 2 years. And within that 2-year period, over 300,000 people have subscribed to my YouTube channel, and it has 10 million views across all of its videos at this point. So that's pretty cool, but that's not all I do. And I mean, Gwen kind of told you a little bit of it, but I run a site called College Info Geek that I started when I was a sophomore. So that's basically kind of an umbrella for all the YouTube videos, along with 500 different blog articles. And I also run 2 podcasts. One that is ostensibly about college advice, and one that is ostensibly about all things personal finance. But to be honest, these podcasts are really just ways for me to make bad puns. But people like the puns. And I'm also, a blogger. I have that book, so I'm an author. And I guess I'm also sometimes a speaker, or at least I'm fairly decent at convincing people to let me up on their stages. So, if you were to ask me what I was, I guess the real answer is that I am a professional internet person. Sometimes I hang out with other internet people. Here's me with Destin from the Smarter Everyday channel on YouTube. Awesome guy, by the way, way cooler than me. And here's me with a guy with a boot on his head. He's on the internet sometimes too. And it's still surreal to think that this is my job for a couple of reasons. Number one, I started blogging back in 2010. And when I'd look up to the people I really liked on YouTube, people I really liked who had blogs I read, I would think these guys and these girls are the gods of the pantheon. They are untouchable either by some stroke of ridiculous luck or by some ridiculous intelligence that I cannot even fathom. They have these audiences. And I will never touch that level of audience there. So I will just be nice and, I will deal with my mom reading my blog and the dude at the NSA reading my blog and maybe like 4 other people, and that'll be good. And yet, now I'm able to throw out statistics that I looked up to and that I thought were completely impossible to reach just a few short years ago, which is completely surreal to me. But the other thing is, I truly, ridiculously love the work I do. I wake up every single morning and I'm like, let's go, let's get it done. I am really happy to work 12 hours a day today because I'm super excited for what I'm going to build. And yeah, it does get hard. There are days when I work from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Not always, but it happens. And there are days when I've been staring at a screen like this during an 8-hour editing session and I start to question my sanity. But for the most part, I completely love the work that I do. And that's the result of 3 different qualities. And I don't know most of you guys personally. I'm looking forward to getting to know some of you after this presentation, but I can confidently say that the 3 qualities of work that make my work so satisfying are also going to apply to you, no matter what career field you go into, no matter what job you get. And I'm not just pulling this out of nowhere. This isn't some platitude I'm leaning on. This is the result of scientific study that has been replicated time and time again. So I'm going to share what these 3 qualities of work are for you in a second so you can start to think, how do I cultivate these in my life? But I want to set the stage first by talking about money. Now, money's a good motivator, right? I mean, a lot of people come to college because they want to get a good job that pays well. And that's the selling point a lot of times. College students make $100,000 more over the course of their career than a high school graduate. Or maybe it's $1 million. I forget the statistic. But in a second, you might not think money's such a good motivator after all, especially for you guys. So I was watching a TED Talk recently by a guy named Dan Pink, and he's the author of this psychology book named Drive. And he was talking about this study that was done at MIT, where they grabbed a bunch of college students, they put them in a room and said, hey, we're going to have you guys do a bunch of challenges. You're going to memorize some digits. How about you do the 10th digit of pi? You go throw a basketball into a basketball hoop, and you do word puzzles, all these different kinds of challenges. And they were like, all right, we're going to rank you, and we're going to pay you. So you guys do okay, sort of well, you're going to get a little cash prize. A little bit better, you're going to get more money. And the top performers are going to get the most money. And what they were interested to see is once those performance benchmarks were set, what happens when money comes into the picture? Is money a motivator? And the interesting thing is the results were kind of split. So for the tasks that required basically no brain power, a monkey could do them. Hey, you go shovel that snow over there, and if you shovel it faster than normal, we'll get you more money. Money works as expected. It's a good motivator. But the moment you get any sort of cognitive strain, any sort of analytical problem solving, any sort of creativity, the role of money actually flips. And money becomes a demotivator. So the hallmark of any scientific study or scientific result is its replicability. So they wanted to take this result and see if it applied to other people around the world. Now they're thinking to themselves, maybe these MIT students, they don't care about $50. So let's go to the countryside of India where our top catchphrase is actually 2 months worth of salary. Maybe if it's 2 months of salary, this is going to be a really good motivator. Maybe money just needs to be substantially high. A lot of people think this. But once again, the results are the same. Menial labor, money's a great motivator. Any kind of brain work, any kind of the stuff you guys are here to learn to do, bad motivator. Actually, the people at the top performers, they had the largest relative decrease in performance once money entered the equation. And this is called the over-justification effect. This is what happens when you have an external motivator that comes in, and this is usually money, but it could be other things like fame or social media followers or anything else that's external. It squashes that internal motivation. And if you guys think to something you really love to do, maybe you really love to sew or build costumes, or maybe you really love to, work with Legos or something. There's this intrinsic motivation when you start. You don't have an audience, you don't have people who trust you, you just do it because you like to do it. And you stay up till 2 a.m. and you're like, I'm gonna make this thing. And then once money enters the equation, now the motivation dies. I had this happen to me recently. Back in March, I had a string of 4 successful videos. I started with this video about why you shouldn't tell people about your goals, and from there, all 4 of the next videos I made got over 100,000 views within 2 weeks. Now for me, that's like, whoa, I've never even seen that happen before. I usually get like 40,000. And I've watched this progression in my YouTube channel, like first week 10,000, first week 20,000. It's really interesting because when you're like in little cockroach mode, ramen profitable, you think, hey, 100 views in a day, that's insane. And it all just kind of normalizes as you grow to the point where 10,000 views in a day is actually bad. But 100,000 views for the 4 videos in a row, awesome. And I looked at my little stat dashboard on YouTube and I saw for the first time that within a 28-day period, which is their normal period for reporting, I was about to hit 1 million views. And there was this switch flipped to my brain. What if I could hit the 1 million view milestone in 28 days? Oh man, that would be cool. So I now have an external motivator. And here's what happens. I don't publish a video for 3 weeks, and I scrap like 10 different scripts, and I have absolutely zero creativity. Because I didn't make those first 4 videos for the views. I made them because I was really interested in the topics, I really wanted to dig into the research behind sleep, I really wanted to put a horse farting a rainbow for a transition. Like, I like doing dumb things like that. That was fun, and as a result, I had high motivation, those did well. But the moment that motivation became about the views, became about the money, all crushed. So, money, not such a good motivator. Now, I don't want you guys to think that money is absolutely not important. One of the paradoxical things about money is when you have money, money's not a big issue, but when you don't have money, it becomes the biggest issue in your life. So do think about money a little bit. We'll talk a bit more about that in a second. But that brings us back to those 3 initial qualities. What are the top 3 qualities of your work that are going to make you the most satisfied, that are going to make it more likely to be a passion than anything else? Those qualities are, and this is the result of that research, autonomy, which is a feeling that you have control over your work, right? You're the master of your own destiny. You call the shots. There's not somebody who basically stuck a joystick into the top of your head and is moving you around like an Atari. No, you call the shots. Also mastery, a feeling that you have competence in your work, you have skill, you can do things other people can't do. You have worked your way from the bottom, and now you can do amazing things. That really contributes to passion in your work. And lastly, purpose. So if you feel like what you're doing has meaning, that it actually matters, that what you do on a daily basis, you actually care about the outcome, you're much more likely to think that work is a calling or a passion. Now, this is what makes my work so great. And what I do on a daily basis, for the most part, there's a ton of different moving parts and gears and springs and all sorts of weird clockwork that goes into my business, but the raw hours go into writing and researching, filming and editing videos, and then recording podcasts. Luckily, I don't have to record or edit the podcast anymore. I've got someone who does that for me. So it's all communication or creative work. And given that, if somebody had to guess what I majored in, and Gwen spoiled it a little bit, but if somebody had to guess what I majored in, what do you think they would guess? Maybe journalism? Journalism's probably the closest one. Maybe film, English, marketing maybe. Well, the interesting thing is I didn't major in anything nearly around that wheelhouse. I majored in management information systems. And what this is a big mishmash of IT, computer networking, database administration, basically staring at computer screens with lots of code that nobody understands all day, or project management. There's some little non-techy areas of it, mixed together with business. And the reason that I was interested in this major was because in high school, I was really interested in computers. I had been building websites since I was 12 years old for dumb bands that I liked. So I really wanted to learn more. I basically wanted to be Tank from The Matrix, this guy with all the monitors and everything. I wanted to be him. His cable management's terrible, by the way, but I'll forgive him. He's like fighting robots or something. And I also had an interest in business. I took a few business classes in high school, but I also was part of a club called Business Professionals of America. Anybody here do that club? Or FBLA or DECA? We got a few, all right. Air, bro fist right there. Yes. So you know what this club is. I'll tell the rest of you guys. So for those kind of high school students who are not like, hey, I want to party on the weekend or play video games, I'd rather do stuff that 30-year-olds do, which was me. You go to hotels about twice a year, I think, once per semester, and you do this state conference where you compete in a bunch of different business-related events. So I did a business plan competition. I literally had to make a giant business plan for a fake company and present it to a panel of investors, and that was cool. And there were other events as well, but then during my senior year, I campaigned to be part of the state council, and I ended up getting elected as the state treasurer, and all my pictures from BPA are blurry, sorry about that, but I got to go and speak in front of 500 different students, and I had to manage the money and the budget for the entire state chapter BPA, and that was cool. So I started thinking, can I take this business interest and this computer interest and mash it all together? And that's what MIS is. Now, one other cool thing about the beginning of my freshman year is immediately when I started that freshman semester, I also got a job at the campus tech support center. And this was actually a really good thing because it was my job to find solutions to people's problems. You got a virus on your computer? Well, Tom, it's your job to solve it. Have fun Googling. You can't connect to the internet? Or the most common problem, this is the easiest, but most students were like, yeah, I forgot my password after 2 days of making it, and then you gotta reset it for them. That was my job. But that accelerated my skill development immensely because when you start college, at least in MIS, you ain't learning about computers. You're doing composition and Microsoft Word class and Algebra 2 all over again. That was what I did. So that job was my first initial and ridiculously accelerated introduction to computers, which was super, super cool. So as we chart this crazy map that is my career path here, I want to give you guys 5 different lessons that I learned along the way that helped me to achieve work that I really love. Because number one, I want to make this not all about me, but number two, I think if you can glean some of the lessons that I learned, you're going to have a much better career path as well. So the first lesson is sort of pulled from this MIS selection and also the job that I went into immediately, which is to simply pick an interest that you have and make that your major, or make that your initial pursuit. Now, a couple of things to note here. MIS was not my passion. And I want to say that because a lot of the career advice that gets thrown around on the internet these days and in books and on Dave Ramsey or whatever, they're just like, dude, just follow your passion, find your passion, you'll never work a day in your life. You know about the sun, dude? Hey, if you have your passion, you walk outside, the sun literally becomes the Teletubby sun with the baby smiling at you. It's all happiness and smiles and roses. That's not how it works. Because there's not some passion just like hiding inside of you. You can't just dig it out with a spoon, right? Passion isn't something that is born innately and placed upon you upon birth. It's something that you unearth through experiences and through skills and through the combination of ideas. There are jobs out there that people 100 years ago could not even fathom. Like if you take your grandpa who's working in the Great Depression and you're going to be like, I'm a social media manager. That's my passion. He's going to be like, what? There's like 20,000 steps to him to be able to understand that. If it's the 1930s, right? So passion isn't something you can just unearth. It comes through interest and it comes through work. So pick something you're interested in. Also, you guys are in college. I'll say it, this is an investment. You're making an investment. This costs a lot of money. Maybe you're paying it. Maybe your parents are paying it. But people are ponying up cash for you to be here. And there's an opportunity cost. You guys could have spent this next 4 years working somewhere, making money. So there needs to be a return on investment, which is why your interest needs to be somewhat promising. I was watching John Oliver the other day, and he was talking about how this girl called in to Susie Orman and said, hey, I want to travel to Iceland. I want to pay $10,000 to get an elf spot.